President Obama is going to submit his 2013 budget proposal to Congress. The plan includes tax hikes on the wealthiest Americans and targeted investments, including this: $476 billion for infrastructure upgrades over 6 years, $350 billion for job creation, $30 billion to hire teachers and police and firefighters, $30 billion to modernize schools, $2.2 billion in R&D for advanced manufacturing. Also, it forecasts a deficit of $1.3 trillion by the end of the fiscal year. Of course, that is receiving lots of criticism already. Joining our panel this morning is the chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus, which is Democratic Congressman Emanuel Cleaver, of the state of Missouri. Nice to see you. National Journal editor Ron Brownstein has joined our panel as well. Ron, it's nice to have you joining us. We appreciate it. So let's begin with this, if you will, Congressman. What do you think of this? Originally, you had said for the last budget proposal that you were wildly disappointed. What do you think this time around?
Well, I think the president is attempting to put forth a document that is realistic and addresses the needs we have at the same time. It's not going to be a pretty budget. It's going to probably have some difficulties over in the Senate, and it's probably dead on arrival over at the House. But that's because Congress is dysfunctional, and we're not going to sit down and try to work around the edges of the budget. I mean, the budget that is presented by the president, he understands that if it is ever going to be approved, his budget must budge. But the danger here is that we're going to struggle around without addressing the major problems. Let me just say, the president's getting a lot of criticism. I don't think it's deserved that, you know, he's created all this problem. We do have a serious ailment as a nation, and certainly as Congress. We suffer from spendicitis, but President Obama is not the one who spread this disease. It was there when he was inaugurated. All
right, well, there's an interesting disease metaphor. Let's get to Congressman Blackburn, who's with us, paneling with us this morning, and it's nice to have you. And so I could just throw this right to you, because this is Congress dysfunctional? Spendicitis is a disease that predates President Obama?
Spending has been out of control over the last 50 years, and it's amazing to look at the graphs and see what has happened over that period of time. Now, what we have to do is begin to ratchet that spending back down and do it aggressively.
So what do you think of this budget?
I think the budget spends too much money, and it puts on programs we don't want. I would go in and do across-the-board spending cuts. Every year I've been in Congress, I have voted, I have pushed forward with across the board. You do it across the board. Our states do it across the board. Our cities do it across the board.
But you were annoyed when they were trying to cut the military, right? So you don't believe in the military.
Front page of USA Today has a thing about states and cities spending less. And Soledad, there are ways in the DOD and Pentagon budget to achieve some savings.
So where would you cut?
And they should be done. What you do is across the board, and you engage everybody to find those cuts. That's the way it has worked successfully in the states.
So he's investing, as we said. So the president's investing
a 2% cut. It's the way to go about it with discretionary
spending. Can you do that
spending.
in education?
Yes, you can, because there's a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of waste.
All right, let me get back to Congressman Cleaver first. Go ahead, Ron.
Congressman, I want to ask you a question. We have had a decade where, whether it was the prescription drug plan, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and certainly the stimulus spending, in which we have spent without providing offsetting revenue, but at the same time spending has gone up. We're at 14% of GDP now for federal revenue, the lowest it's been since 1950. My question to you is, the president says we can close this gap without raising taxes on anybody below $250,000 a year. Does the Congressional Black Caucus agree that everyone below $250,000 a year should be exempt from any taxation as part of the effort to close the deficit gap?
Well, not from any taxation. I think the president is right, and it's not just the Congressional Black Caucus. I think the majority of Americans understands that when you have a problem, an economic problem in your house or whether it's in the nation, there are two things you do. One, you begin to cut spending, and number two, you look for new sources of revenue. People who earn under $250,000 are not rich, and they can still continue to function with the tax code as it is. People who are above, there should be some kind of surtax. I'm in Kansas City, Missouri. This is the home of H&R Block. Henry and Richard Block started this company. Henry Block, who's been a Republican all of his life, said to me that he doesn't understand what's going on when people are saying they need to protect him from having to pay more taxes. And he knows a little bit about taxes, I think. So I think we've got to be able to cut spending while at the same time raising revenues. Even Ben Bernanke has said that you got to be careful about making major cuts because the economy is still fragile.
Did you want to make a point, Ariane?
Yes, just wanted to ask you, Congressman, you yourself acknowledged that this budget is really dead on arrival. We're discussing it, but it's not going to go anywhere. Are you concerned about the fact that the president now is putting forward a budget that is going to increase spending and stimulate the economy, but in fact, in the past, for his other two budgets and his pronouncements, he was focusing on austerity measures and belt tightening, and clearly this is a political document. And in the meantime, your own community is being decimated with unemployment over 13%. How do you feel about that?
Well, I tried to speak to that earlier. Look, this budget is a nervous breakdown on paper. And it's not just President Obama. I mean, I think he's put together a document that addresses education. We need to do it. Community colleges need to be upgraded. We've got to have training for real jobs. We've got a lot of jobs that are going unfilled because we don't have the technology in the heads of graduating college students to deal with them. But look, we're still in a recession. We're still struggling. Unemployment is still too high. In every major city in the country, people are struggling. So for the federal government to turn the spigot off completely, I think, is to push the nation into a deeper economy. That's not just me talking. Some of the top economists in the nation have said the same thing.
Congressman Cleaver, I want to thank you for your time this morning. We appreciate it. Got to take a short break. Welcome back, everybody. We're talking the president's budget this morning. He's submitting his 2013 budget proposal to Congress. Plan includes tax hikes on the wealthiest Americans and targeted investments, including these: $476 billion for infrastructure upgrades over the next 6 years, $350 billion for job creation, $30 billion to hire teachers and police and firefighters, $30 billion to modernize schools, $2.2 billion on R&D for advanced manufacturing. We're joined now by Republican Congressman Jeb Hensley of the great state of Texas. Nice to see you, sir. He's also the chairman of the House Republican Conference and co-chaired the Debt Super Committee. It's nice to have you. So in a nutshell, what do you think of this budget? It's been out now for 16 minutes.
Well, that's long enough to be bitterly disappointed. I mean, I'm bitterly disappointed in two respects. Number one, the president told us that at the end of his first term, he would cut the deficit in half. And instead, we have our nation's first, second, third, and fourth trillion-dollar deficits. Second of all, I mean, there's a debt crisis, and the president's budget doesn't deal with it. And what we have, again, are the largest debt we've had as a percentage of our economy since World War II. I mean, I was listening to your program earlier. You're reporting on what's happening in Greece. I mean, I don't think America could turn into Greece, but I don't know. I mean, they have rioting in the streets. They have homelessness that are up, suicides that are up. I mean, the debt is serious, and the president doesn't deal with the drivers of the debt. And even if you gave the president every single job-killing tax increase he's requested, that's about 16%, maybe 17% of the new additional debt that he's putting on the backs of the American people. It
so
is
there not one thing in there that you like?
Creators.
So we came into your segment.
Well, I must admit, in 16 minutes, I haven't read the entirety of it.
But enough to be bitterly disappointed. We heard you. We heard you on that.
Well,
so what I gave you a couple, in all seriousness, let me stop you for a second.
Deficits as far as the eye can see.
I hear you. Let me stop you for a second, because we came into your segment listing some of the very small handful of things that are in this budget. Again, $30 billion to hire teachers, police officers, firefighters, $30 billion to modernize schools, $350 billion for job creation, infrastructure upgrades at $476 billion. You're against all those things?
What I'm against is saddling this economy and future generations with debt that they can't handle. I mean, we've got to quit spending money we don't have. I mean, we're borrowing.
So are you against all of those things?
On the dollar.
So those things that I just listed, which is
I'm against trillion-dollar deficits as far as the eye can see. You will see a Republican budget that puts the nation on a path to fiscal sustainability without raising taxes on small business people and job creators. So, you know, I'd like to see the line items. There may be individual programs that we could work with the president on, but in its totality, raising taxes on small businesses and job creators and saddling future generations with more debt is not the answer. So
Congressman,
there may be line items I can agree with.
Hold on one second.
So it's not surprising that a Republican like Jeb Hensarling doesn't like this offer, but it's clear this is not the last offer of the president, but the first. I mean, last summer, the president and John Boehner did reach an agreement that went well beyond this in terms of restraining spending on entitlement programs, and John Boehner could not sell it to his Republican caucus, including members, I think, like those here today.
He just glanced over at you, ma'am.
So the question, I mean, the question is, I think the issue is there any more appetite in 2012 than there was in 2011 for a deal that would inevitably include some tax increases, but would also have the president going much further than he's going today in terms of controlling spending on Medicare and Medicaid?
Congressman Cleaver says this is a nervous breakdown. Hold on one second, sir. Let me get to your colleague, your Republican colleague, Marsha Blackburn, is with us this morning, and then I'll get right back to you. Congressman Cleaver says this is a nervous breakdown on paper.
Because it is into avoidance. The federal government has an addiction, since we've talked about that, to the taxpayers' money. And the point is this, Soledad, the debt is higher than it has ever been. We have had nearly $5 trillion worth of debt come on the books in the last few years. Ron and I, being budget nerds who look through all those historical tables, you know, when you go back, and I will do that this week, I'll get those historical tables, I'll look at where we have gone over the last 50 years. We cannot support this. When you look at,
let me get back, hold on one second, let me get back to the Congressman for a second.
We can't afford it.
Okay, so, Congressman, excuse me, sir, I've got a little brawling here at my panelists. You wanted to jump in and add something.
Well, let me just agree with Marsha Blackburn, who I often do. Again, this is the highest debt as a ratio of our economy since World War II. World War II was a temporary phenomena. This one is presenting red ink as far as the eye can see. At a time where we desperately need to create jobs in this economy, where almost 13 million of our fellow countrymen are still out of work, we can't handle this level of debt. And you know what? It's not even a matter of cutting the budget. It's just making sure that the federal budget doesn't grow beyond the ability of the family budget to pay for it. And in that respect, the president's policies have failed and failed yet again.
Congressman Hensarling, thank you for joining us this morning. We appreciate your time. Ariana, you wanted to add something.
Yes, just very quickly. The problem is that if we don't grow the economy, we will not be able to get out of the debt crisis. I think there is complete agreement that we have a debt crisis. The same issue in Greece. The problem, and the reason why people are protesting, is that there is absolutely no path to growth in Greece. The agreement that was passed by the parliament sees Greece growing by 2013. No way. The same with America. If we don't grow, it doesn't matter how much we cut. We cannot cut enough to fix the debt crisis.
All right, that will be our final word on this as we head to commercial break. Time for End Point with our panelists. The Congresswoman will begin for us. Congressman Blackburn, what you got?
The president's budget is too big. It spends money that we don't have for programs the American people don't want. And I think it's going to be a point of conversation all the way from now to November.
Now, you have been on the set at the time that budget was delivered. All you know is the bullet points that I have said and talked to with your congressman.
I know what the historical tables hold.
Yes, we'll tell you.
And I'll be looking at them. Ron and I will come back and we'll go through those.
You know, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about taxes all year, but this morning with Whitney Houston, I think, is a reminder that tragedy can find you in every tax bracket.
That is so true.
Yeah.
That is so true.
The budget is really a campaign document, not a budget. It's not going to go anywhere. I actually like what's in the budget. I like the extra infrastructure spending. I like the Pell Grants, the money for teachers and policemen. But why didn't he do that in 2012 or the 2011 budget when he bought into the whole idea of austerity as the way to go?
That is it for our End Point this morning. My End Point is going to be Whitney Houston, because I agree, and I hope that if there is ever a lesson to be taken out of a tragedy, it is for people who are addicts. She struggled with addiction her whole adult life. After her tremendous success in The Bodyguard, she said she really started doing a lot of drugs, and friends and family tried to help her, and they never really were able to, because ultimately it comes down to the individual trying to really break the habit. So we remember Whitney Houston today, because she had a seriously amazing voice. We'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. for Starting Point. Now it's time for CNN Newsroom. Kira Phillips.